We got a quorum here, so we'll go ahead and move forward. I'm expecting one more to show up. This is the regular meeting of the North Augusta Board of Zoning Appeals for April 2nd, 2024. Begin with a roll call. Kevin Skaggs.
Jim Newman.
Again, we do have a quorum with three of us here. First item is approval of the minutes, and hope you had a chance to look at them. They were very detailed, and I want to make sure everybody feels comfortable what was in there. I do have a couple changes to make, but I was going to let y'all go ahead and speak up. You change anything?
I read through them. I thought they were very complete. I didn't have any specific changes that came to my mind.
Okay. What I wanted to add is on page 7 of 9. Well, actually, page 6 is the start down at the bottom under the consideration part. You recall we went from the criteria, the first question, the criteria. We skipped over that. Answered the second one. We skipped over the third, and then the fourth one was one that the denial was based off of. And just to help the reader, now I would like to add this sentence at the end of item 1. So at the bottom of page 6, under consideration, item 1, the last sentence, I would like to add, discussion was moved to the next criterion due to lack of clear consensus. The intent was to return to this item for resolution later if necessary. Yes. Are y'all good with that?
Yes.
And then I would like to use the same sentence.
Just a second, Mr. Chairman. I don't write so fast. Hang on a second.
I'll write it again. I'll read it again real slow.
Discussion moved to next criteria.
Discussion was moved to the next criterion due to lack of clear consensus, period. The intent was to return to this item for resolution later, if necessary.
That's a good addition because I remember that.
What was that last sentence?
The intent was to return to this item for resolution later, if necessary.
Got it.
And I'd like to add the same sentence at the end of item number 3. Got it, okay? All right, we have a motion to accept as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nobody opposed. Thank you. All right. Confirmation of the agenda. Is any changes to be made? We just got one item tonight.
Just one, yes, sir.
Considered the agenda confirmed.
Yes.
Yep. Screens went black.
There we go.
All right, I think I can read from here. One item is ZB 24-001, a request by Drayton Parker Companies LLC for variance to allow placement of a high-rise sign from table 9-2 signs. Excuse me, I'm reading the wrong one.
Yes, sir. That's last month.
That was a minute. Okay. All right. Start over. ZB 24-004, request by Daniel Merritt, Seaman Whiteside for a variance from the minimum parking requirement of table 8-1 parking requirements by use of Article 8 parking in the North Augusta Development Code. The application affects a future self-storage facility on approximately 3.3767 acre parcel off Edgefield Road, PPN 011-07-01-013, Zone GC General Commercial. And at this time, I'll open the public hearing. And Mr. Paradise, anything you want to add to this or anything?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple things. The applicant proposes to build a 4-story mini storage building with 30,000 square feet per floor, totaling 120,000 square feet. It has 950 storage units. A lot of those, I think, are the fairly smaller units, 10 by 10. The North Augusta Development Code requires a minimum of 4 spaces for every 10 units. So that their minimum parking ratio for this storage facility would be 95 spaces. The applicant thinks that is asking for a variance to reduce that to 17 parking spaces. And in the application, and I'll let the applicant talk about what he submitted, but one of the things he was submitted is calculations from an engineer where they used the Institute of Transportation Engineers parking demand manual. And just like I'm going to talk about the trip generation in just a minute, manual, there's another one for parking demand. And this is standards that engineers use for design. And based on that manual, he came up that they needed a minimum of 12 spaces. The applicant is requesting 17. So what I did, now he's in the parking demand manual. I don't have that manual. But we used the ITE, or Institute of Transportation Engineers, trip generation handbook to determine trip generations for traffic studies. So what I did was I plugged in the numbers, and on number, I think it is 2, you got some wrong data that got plugged in by the planner. In our sheet, it was supposed to be per 100, and that note is not in our calculation. So, and so it is skewed higher than what it actually is. And I'm going to give you the correct numbers here. A 950 unit mini storage facility, when you talk about trips, generates 174 vehicle trips over a 24-hour period. Now remember, a trip is a drive in and a drive out. So that 174 vehicle trips actually results in 86 vehicles that's on the site. And the peak hour of the day generates 18 trips. Remember, 1 in, 1 out, so that's 9 vehicles at the busiest time of the day. Now, if you take that and put it in a different category and look it up by square footage, 120,000 square foot mini storage facility would generate 117 vehicle trips a day. You know, some things it's which column you plug it into. So remember, 1 in, 1 out equals 2 trips. So I divide that in half, and you get 58.5 vehicles that's coming in and out of that vehicle or facility every day. And the peak hour is 11 trips. So that's 5.5 vehicles in and out. I don't know how you get a half vehicle, but okay. That's what the calculation comes for. So I say that so that whenever their engineer says, oh, this book says we only need 12 spaces, and the city's development code over here is saying, yeah, but you need 95, that's a big gap. And basically what I'm doing there is in my mind, and of course y'all are the decision makers, but using the data, the resources I have available to me to confirm their engineers' idea that they only need 12 spaces. they are requesting 17 spaces. So they're going above what their engineer has said is the minimum. And at 17 spaces, when I look at the vehicle trips, it would seem to carry the load. And any questions for me?
No. Do you know what the development code's basis was to go by the number of units? Is that in the ITE handbook somewhere to go by that?
No, sir, we do not follow that. That is something that was copied over from the old development code into the new development code. And we do not go to the ITE parking demand ratios to determine our parking requirements. We have the parking demand requirements come straight out of the development code. I got a feeling that it probably came at a different time when storage units may have been a little bit different, and there may not have been as common and a larger parking demand, but I really don't know.
The other question, so maybe it's a question for both of you. So the handbook
Mhm.
you use, is that considered I guess, an industry guide or
Yes, sir.
standard or?
The Institute of Transportation Engineers is a international organization of transportation engineers that is the industry standard. They do all of this research, they do all these studies, and compile this. In the 11th generation, the book that we use for our trip generation was just updated. I think it was November of last year, or November of 22. And then the parking demand manual, I've really not ever worked in. So I can't say, but coming from the Institute of Transportation Engineers, that would be a recognized industry standard.
I think that's the questions I have for you.
Excuse me?
That's all I have for you.
I'm good. I don't have anything.
For you.
You just answered mine.
The applicant want to step up, speak, say anything? Just like last time, I got to swear you in. Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
State your name and address, please.
Daniel Merritt, and my address is 701 Easley Bridge Road in Greenville.
Thank you. All right.
So, I mean, I don't really have a ton to add based on what Tommy kind of let you guys know. You know, at the end of the day, the North Augusta Development Code, it's the requirement is minimum 4 spaces plus 1 per 10 units. So it's really, you know, when you have a self-storage facility like we have with a lot of smaller units, which is what current market is tended to demand, and you follow, you know, ordinances that were written for, you know, previous time, maybe 30 years ago, you end up overparked. And I know we did a similar project in Greenville, similar size. Actually, I think it was a little bit bigger than this one. And the city at the time made us put in, I think it was 27 spaces. And I drive by that thing all the time. And it's been open for years. And we've got parking spaces ringing that building to meet their minimum requirements. And there may be 3 cars in front of the door, and that's it. So again, the ask here is to reduce the amount of parking required based on this use. You know, I don't think it's in my personal opinion, I don't think it's in our client, the property owner's best interest. I don't think it's in the city of North Augusta's best interest, and I also don't think it's in the general community's best interest to add additional parking for no reason other than to meet a random ratio. So,
Uh, Does your conceptual design show 17 spaces now?
I believe it does. Yes, sir.
All right.
Now, are y'all planning on renting vehicles or trucks or?
We are not.
Involved.
And when we were here before you last time to get the special exception to allow the use, that was one of the conditions that we wrote into our special exception application, was that we would not allow the rental of U-Hauls, other things like that. We would also not be permitting the long-term storage of vehicles.
What about your employees? How many? I'm sure they'll have their own little designated spots.
Yeah, so what we typically see with these is there's a small office building, usually on the corner of this building, 1 to 2 people max, and that's at the heaviest kind of shift load. Most of the time, it's a couple of cars for employees.
Pardon me. Just one question, and this is more of just an if. But if it turned out that you were seeing all 12 or 17, I guess, spaces filled for some reason on a pretty consistent basis, people moving around looking, will there or is there space where you could add a few more down the road if you needed to?
Yes, sir, we could. So if you're looking at the conceptual plan right there off the, I guess, planned south drive, we could go in with additional parking stalls there, should they be required. That would require a good bit of earthwork and retaining walls. And one of the conditions that we wrote in, I think one of the variance review criteria was list voluntary conditions on the part of the developer. One of the conditions that we are hoping to include with this is that should parking become an issue on this site, that the property owner will work with the city to add additional spaces as deemed necessary.
Okay.
I had one more question, one more. In your submittal, the table 1 called for parking demand, we did, I guess you showed your summary. Is this one page? The table said this was referencing 750 units.
Yes,
I never
sir.
found it was a typo.
I noticed that myself. I do believe that is a typo. However, I can put your mind at ease here. So we were originally anticipating up to, and what we got approval for with our special exception was up to a 4-story building of 950 units. As of right now, I think market is demanding that we go with a 3-story building on this site. So that would be around 650 to 675 units. But I do believe that's a typo on the table 1 parking demand.
Okay, so the 12 and the 9 numbers were based off 950.
They were based off 950 and 120,000 square feet, which would have been 4 stories.
I think I'm done. Anybody else want to come say anything? Anybody else from the public? All right.
All right, thank you.
We'll close the public hearing. All right. So, bear with me when I read this. Not sure if this first sentence is correct, but anyway. For North Augusta Development Code 17.5.1, the Board of Zoning Appeals shall hear and decide appeals for variances from the requirements of Article 4 zoning districts established in Article 9 signs when strict application of the regulations would result in unnecessary hardship. The variance may be granted in an individual case of unnecessary hardship if the Board of Zoning Appeals makes and explains in writing all the following. An unnecessary hardship exists. Number 2, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. Number 3, the conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. Number 4, because of the conditions, the application of this chapter to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Number 5, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. Harm to the character of the district may include structures that are significantly out of scale and the creation of potential for the creation of excessive noise, light, traffic, or incompatible late night activity. In the approval of an application for a variance from the provisions of Article 13 signs regulating, we're not doing signs. Item 6 is not applicable. Number 7, the Board of Zoning Appeals may not grant a variance in the effect of which would be A, to allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in a zoning district, B, to extend physically a nonconforming use of land, or C, to change zoning district boundaries shown on the official zoning map. Number 8, if the unnecessary hardship is self-imposed by the applicant, the variance should not be granted. Number 9, the fact that the property may be utilized more profitably should a variance be granted shall not be considered grounds for a variance. And number 10, in granting a variance, the Board of Zoning Appeals may attach to it such conditions regarding the location, character, or other features of the proposed building, structure, or use as the board may consider advisable to promote the public health, safety, or general welfare. Based on these findings of fact, the Board of Zoning Appeals may approve with conditions, or deny the request. In other words, we've got to answer in the affirmative for all 10 of these criteria. And if we find one that we can't answer in the affirmative, the process kind of stops right there. Okay, now we can get started. So the first item, first criterion, get my pages right, is, and that's number 1, an unnecessary hardship exists. The applicant states that the current requirements for parking in the development code required the design permitting a construction of an excessive amount of impervious paved parking that would never be needed or used. This will reduce the amount of green space, landscape buffering space on site. We would also reduce the amount of buildable area and would contribute to more stormwater runoff, more heat island effect, and a general degradation of the overall site. The staff notes that the table 8.1 of the development code states that for many warehouses and still storage has a minimum number of vehicle spaces of 4 spaces plus 1 per 10 units and a maximum number of vehicle spaces of 6 spaces plus 1.5 per 10 units. So I'd read this as the hardship is that the development code requires an excessive amount of parking.
It's almost, it seems to be like an anachronism.
Yeah.
I'm good with 1.
I don't have any issue with number 1 in hardship. Okay. You okay, Jim?
I'm good.
All right. So we're good with number 1. Number 2, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. The applicant states that due to the large number of smaller units within the project, plus or minus 90% of the proposed units are smaller than 10 by 20 feet, the requirement for parking spaces based on unit count creates an excessive amount of required parking. Market studies have shown that there is a large demand for smaller storage units and that the vehicular traffic generated required by these types of development does not warrant the amount of parking required by the City of North Augusta Development Code. Staff notes using the 11th edition of the ITE trip generation rates manual indicates,
That's incorrect.
That's the one that resides. Let me read the revision. Staff notes that using the 11th edition of the ITE generation rates manual indicates with a proposed 30,000 square foot storage building, the total daily trips would be 44 with 3.
That would also be incorrect, Mr. Skaggs. I forgot to multiply that by 4. It's 30,000 per floor.
Okay. All right. We didn't
I gave you the correct numbers in the beginning.
Okay. Thank you. Should have asked that question because I was trying to follow the numbers.
Oh, I'm sorry about the confusion I've caused.
Okay. All right,
This is
so,
on me.
okay. So do you want to clarify again what the staff notes are?
Yes, sir. The staff notes is that a 950 unit mini storage facility would generate 174 vehicle trips a day, and with 18 trips being during the peak hour. And of course, as I said, that's about 9 vehicles, and a 120,000 square foot, 4-story times 4 times 30,000 would generate 117 vehicle trips a day with a peak hour generation of 11 trips. And that's about 5.5 vehicles.
Which is less than their request. Right.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
I'm good.
I'm all right. I'm good too. That one. Item number 3, the conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. The applicant states that the issue is caused by the zoning requirement for parking for this use and is not dependent on the individual parcel. The variance sought is not parcel related, but standards related. The property will be primarily smaller rental units, and the code basis parking requirements of the overall number of units rather than the overall building size or parcel. The blanket requirement of 1 space per 10 units would create an excessive parking requirement for this development and would be a detriment to the project and the city of North Augusta. Staff notes that the North Augusta Development Code Table 8.1, parking, loading, and stacking states that the use for all proposed mini warehouses and self-storage facilities require a minimum parking requirement of 4 spaces plus 1 per 10 units, and a maximum of 6 spaces plus 1.5 per 10 units. I guess this is,
I like the explanation above. This is more of a standards related
Yes.
variance than a use related variance. I mean, it really is sort of, if you were talking about applying to other properties, you're talking about apples and oranges, unless on another property you had a similar storage unit facility, and then the same issues would apply based on the North Augusta development. So I'm okay with 3.
I'm good.
I'm good with 3 also. Thank you. Item number 4, because of the conditions, the application of this chapter to a particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And the applicant states that the market studies have shown that the proposed use does not demand the amount of parking required by the development code, requiring such an excessive amount of parking spaces which will never be needed or used. The use of the property is restricted to an unreasonable degree, and the property owner is forced into constructing a large parking lot than they do not want or need, furthering the degradation of the overall community. Staff notes that the applicant provided a parking analysis from the ITE Parking Generation Manual, 5th edition, that states that for 950 units, there will be a peak hour parking demand that will be 12 parking spaces for the weekday need and 9 parking spaces needed on the weekend with a minimum of 99 parking spaces required.
And Mr. Chairman, for clarification, that 99 is required by the development code, not the parking demand standards.
Right.
I'm good.
I have no problem.
Yeah, I think the excess parking spaces is unreasonably restricted. When with a standard industry standard, they're generally supporting the applicant wants. So I'm good before. Also, we're all good before. Yes. Right. Item 5, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. Harm to the character of the district may include structures that are significantly out of scale and the creation of potential for the creation of excessive noise, light, traffic, or incompatible late night activity. The applicant states that granting the reduction in the required parking would in fact be a public benefit, as it will reduce the amount of impervious paved area on the site and will allow more green space landscape space. This would improve stormwater infiltration and quality, reduce the heat island effect, and reduce the amount of unused parking within the overall community. Staff notes that excessive parking spaces will produce more impervious surface area, which will lessen the amount of green space for the proposed development.
I'm good with
Good.
I'm good with 5 also. 6 is not applicable because that has to do with signs. Number 7, the Board of Zoning Appeals may not grant a variance, the effect of which would be A, to allow the establishment of use not otherwise permitted in the zoning district, self-storage facilities, or a special exception in general commercial zoning districts within the state regulatory limits, and you have that special section approved. To extend physically a non-conforming use of land, the variance does not extend a physically non-conforming use of land. To change zoning district boundaries shown on the official zoning map, and the application does not propose a change in the zoning district boundaries. So we're good with 7.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Number 8, if the unnecessary hardship is self-imposed by the applicant, the variance should not be granted. The applicant states that the hardship is not self-imposed. The hardship is imposed by the parking requirements mandated in development standards, with the requirement for 1 space per 10 storage units. The site would be predominantly unused parking lot, which would be detriment to both the development and the community. Staff notes that the hardship is created by the minimum requirement of parking spaces for the meeting warehouses and self-storage facilities as stated in North Augusta Development. So I agree that this is not self-imposed.
Yes.
So we're good with number 8. Number 9, that the fact that property may be utilized more profitably should a variance be granted shall not be considered grounds for a variance. Staff notes, staff recognizes that the property will operate as a self-storage facility, and the variance for reduction in parking will not be utilized for profitability.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I mean, it may save them a few dollars on the building and finishing off, but in the long run, I think the pluses that we've already talked about in earlier measures outweigh that.
And their request is supported by an industry standard. Standard methodology.
Good.
Okay, we're good with number 9. Number 10, in granting a variance, the Board of Zoning Appeals may attach to it such conditions regarding the location, character, or other features of the proposed building, structure, or use as the board may consider advisable to promote the public health, safety, or general welfare. Staff recommends approval of this application with the following conditions. There are 2. Number 1, this variance, if granted, will apply only to this property and will not apply to any future development on the site should this plan be developed. Number 2, the variance would require that the building footprint be constructed as conceptually shown in the exhibits.
Good.
Good?
I'm good with that, unless somebody wants to add the
I'm good with those.
addition that if other parking became evidently needed, they would make a reasonable addition to it. But they've got that in their application, I think they said. So
Well, the conceptual plan shows the space, is that correct?
Yeah, it shows the 17.
But it shows you have space where you would expand to. Yeah, okay. So I think you're covered with that. All right. So we've answered the affirmative for all 10. So do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Based on the findings previously discussed and voted on, I move the application number ZV24-004, a request by Daniel Merritt, Seaman Whiteside, for the variance pursuant to section Article 8, parking, Table 8-1, parking requirements by use be granted with the following conditions. A variance will apply only to this property. It will not apply to any other future development on this site should this plan be developed. Plus, the variance would require that the building footprint be constructed as conceptually shown in the exhibits.
Second.
Got a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion?
No, sir.
All in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous. Your variance is approved. Thank you. Right. I think, any other business we need to take up?
I think that would be it, Mr. Chairman.